Well, after the Chris Armas news last week and the Greg Vanny announcement the week before, I think this week we've officially reached the dog days of the off season. But don't worry, still got plenty to talk about on this week's edition of Waking the Red Weekly, presented by Footy Talks. My name is Mitchell Tierney. Today on the show, we'll go through a grab bag of topics, including the MLS Super Draft, both the Canadian men's and women's national teams, and the Canadian Premier League as well. With all that being said, while we do have a show rundown today, we are more than happy to take your questions if you have them. So feel free to ask, interact, rant in the comments section, and we'll do our best to get to them throughout the show. But before we get into that, Jeff, Michael, how are you guys doing this week?
Better than it is outside.
Yeah, I was going to say, trying to stay warm.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and make the show run long, so maybe some of the snow will melt before I have to go out there and shovel it. But
that's the hope. That's the hope.
Not likely. I don't think at the moment. But while it is cold and while there is snow outside, we do finally have something to look forward to. Massive asterisks, of course, attached to all of this. As I love that you did that on the Waking the Red website for the announcement article for when MLS is supposed to return, as we all know. In today's day and age, there's an asterisk attached to everything. But for this, it might be more based on labor negotiations than anything to do with the pandemic, although obviously that remains a major factor. But let's go through the dates quickly here. February 22nd, that's when the start of preseason is planned for MLS. That'll be 6 weeks before opening weekend on April 3rd. Decision day, November 7th.
Oh, it's not just the opening weekend. Please refer to it by its proper name, Mitch. It's been tagged MLS is back because that is a buzzword.
Oh, of course.
Mm-hmm.
The AT&T MLS is back call to the field. And then decision day, November 7th, MLS Cup, December 11th. They are also hoping for the return of the much anticipated Leagues Cup, Campeones Cup, and MLS All-Star Game. I know our Martin Bailey is fist pumping somewhere at the return of the Leagues Cup, but
everybody's favorite. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any thoughts on these announcements, guys? I know, like we said, there's certainly plenty of moving pieces in all of this, but at least we have something to look forward to now, and that's kind of this week's theme of the show is a lot of dates coming out. Will they happen?
Only the shadow knows for sure.
Yeah.
Or John Garber's shadow. I mean, is it though? Is it actually happening? Like, we're still in a huge flux with the Canadian teams, and Twitter yesterday went Sherlock Holmes on the press release, like looking for clues as to what it means for the Canadian teams, and the general consensus was more of the same, just we don't know. I don't know if you guys caught this, that MLS started a Twitter account for its labor negotiations yesterday. That can't be good. I mean, that can't be good. Certainly one would argue that it allows us access to information, but that I would counter that it allows us access to information from one side of the table. So judge everything that comes out of that account with a serious grain of salt. And also, it can't be ignored. That's a bit of a shot across the bow in terms of they want to play this out in the court of public opinion. And that's never a good thing. So I have feelings of dread. I've got the fear, guys.
That's what caught me, Jeff, and is the fact that they are playing it out in the sort of the court of public opinion there. There's hope. I believe. I guess they're giving us is the latest statement that they provide is that they're finalizing agreement with their players' association. Mm-hmm. So hopefully this concrete schedule. I think that's really the best thing that came out of this is MLS now has something to sort of concrete schedule framework to work off. And even in these negotiations, I know we were hearing like a January 28th deadline to sort of come to a conclusion of all of this, but perhaps it pushes this back a little bit, but they still ideally would like to have players agreed to a new deal before the start of start training camp. Yeah. Which is also does require that 14-day quarantine.
Audi presents the Continental Tire preseason is back tournament of champions. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So, at one hand, it's great that we have something to look forward to. On the other hand, we don't know for sure yet, but both sides are moving closer to an agreement by all by all indications. So fingers crossed, man. And I'm looking forward to getting back to a full season as opposed to what it was last year.
Yeah.
No, definitely. I think in terms of asterisks, hopefully we can remove one from the competition schedule itself, which was definitely something that was big last year. Oh boy, we got a George
stroller
here.
from George.
We asked for it though. We did ask.
Yeah,
for
we
it
did. We asked for it. So I'm just gonna. Is there enough room on the screen? Okay, there we go. I'll start. I'll take the first stanza. I wish MLS had the courage to follow NHL, pay the Canadian clubs forward in 21, and relocate the near border U.S. clubs to Canadian stadiums for a North Division for a month's round of matches. New England, Chicago, Minnesota, Seattle, and Portland, maybe. Your thoughts? I mean, the first thought is that NHL is obviously a lot more of a Canadian thing than MLS is, and you'd be asking those teams, as opposed to asking the Canadian teams to make a sacrifice, which seems to be the way to go here, you'd be asking American teams to make a sacrifice and play out of market. And I just don't see that happening. I don't think we have enough of a bargaining chip to do it. That being said, and again, I'm working through this as we go, the situation with COVID is a lot better here than it is there. So maybe.
I feel like we're back at square one again. Like we had these conversations like 7 months ago where TFC were still trying to figure out when they were going to play. And I just feel like we're going to come to the same end result, and that'll be TFC setting up shop somewhere in the States, Montreal, obviously Vancouver as well, setting up shop somewhere in the States. And, Bill Manning left the door open to other possibilities besides East Hartford there in Rentschler Field. He said that they're considering and weighing all possibilities. So is Toronto FC going to return to the rent if they can't play at BMO Field next year? I don't think that's guaranteed. You have to consider, that is UConn men's football's home stadium. So if they're playing a season there, TFC obviously it'd be tough for them to coincide. So maybe they have to look elsewhere, or perhaps there's a workaround where they can play during the off season, the college football season. But regardless, there's some barriers again that we have to overcome here for TFC, and it's going to come down to the last minute again because there's too much unknown. There's just too much unknown.
I don't think it's a bad shout, George. And I think that in terms of logistics and also in terms of just the inescapable fact that, Canada's been dealing with the pandemic a lot better than our neighbors to the south, I just can't see that many American teams. And this might just simply be ego or American exceptionalism or whatever the case may be, but I just can't see them agreeing to do that, because where are they going to train? Where are they going to set up? You're asking teams that played in market last season, and with warts and all, to suddenly pull an East Hartford and figure out their training and figure out where they're staying. And that, for a league that suggests that they lost $1 billion in revenue, asking the better part of the Eastern Conference teams to chalk up more revenue than when they don't necessarily have to. When off the back of this labor dispute, you can see where it's all going, right? This season's going to be a mess, and I don't think clearer heads are going to prevail. I think, like Mike says, it's going to go to the last minute, and then whatever happens, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think for the simple fact of, quarantines, that sort of thing, like I don't think the American teams would want to come up here because, you're looking at in the NHL, the whole Pierre-Luc Dubois trade situation. Like this guy's got to sit out, a good eighth of the season because he has to quarantine after being traded to a Canadian team. Like I think that whole thing just kind of makes this a non-starter.
I'm not on hockey Twitter, so I'm guessing the response to that on hockey Twitter has been measured and perfectly rational, right?
No, I actually do think people kind of understand that one.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Color me surprised because
he didn't get traded to an Alberta team.
Right. I've just been following the progress of Tony D'Angelo's burner accounts, and it's been hilarious.
Boy. Let's avoid all of that before we go too far down the rabbit hole, even if it is incredibly entertaining. Any more points on this, or can we move on? Because again, like we said, there's just a lot of it's just up in the air right now, and we can speculate as best we can. But
we can take a lot of no comfort in the fact that essentially we're being asked to do something that the American teams wouldn't do in a million years, and I think that's the crux of George's comment, which is, once again, we're getting the short end of the stick. I mean, you buy the ticket, you take the ride. We're playing in an American league. You know, look at how Canadian players are treated as internationals on American rosters, right? Like, you don't have to look very far to see that the pendulum or the scales of justice, as they, you know, whatever metaphor you want to use, are permanently sort of not in our favor.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a fair way of summing it up. Let's move on to the MLS Super Draft, which happened this past week. You know, the Super Draft, an interesting topic as always. I think you know, certainly has been a debate for a long time in this league in terms of its usefulness and whatever. We will potentially get into that a little bit later. But Toronto FC did make a selection, 25th overall. Matt DeRosa, a left back out of the University of Maryland. They did have the 18th overall selection, traded down to 25th, got some general allocation money in the process. A left back, so that's a positive there. Fills out a organizational need, certainly, and by all scouting reports, a pretty decent one at that. Your guys' thoughts on the pick? We'll go through some of the other picks as well in a little bit, but you know, I think it's one that makes sense for Toronto FC, and you know, kind of what this draft is there for right now is to build out your roster.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, first off, I think we should definitely commend TFC for making that trade, getting 50K in GM. I know it's the minimum amount that TFC could acquire, but with this team's tight up against the salary budget, so any little bit there sort of helps. And if you take into account New York City FC, one pick prior to Toronto FC traded their pick away completely without getting another pick in return for the 50K GM and an extra 25K in conditional GM. I think by all accounts, that was a steal for TFC to be able to hold on to that first round pick and acquire 50K in salary cap. That's a win. So we'll chalk that up there. Moving on to DeRosa. I mean, he fills an immediate need that TFC needed, and that was obviously there at left back. That doesn't rule out the possibility of Justin Morrow coming back. I think the two of them there on the left flank would actually be a good sort of duo to go into an MLS season with. I have mild expectations for DeRosa, just because he is, you know, a rookie coming out of the Super Draft. You never know which way that'll go, but people have been saying is that he is one of the most league ready rookies, ready to, you know, jump into the MLS right away. His ceiling may not be the highest, but he definitely brings a steady game, a steady back and forth, two-way game down that left flank. So perhaps, you know, TFC has been applauded in the past for being a team that's easy to come into because it's so easy to understand your role. So perhaps that'll also play a factor in DeRosa sort of occupying that left flank. Yeah, Jeff, what are your thoughts on DeRosa?
MLS is evil. Why did they break up the brothers DeRosa? That was unfortunate.
Yeah, no situation.
That was no good. The other thing is Scarfgate. Like, did they send a box of every team scarf to every potential draft pick and then had someone just sift through them to find the one that they were, and then do they have to send the other scarves back?
I'd imagine, right?
Or is there going to be like a run on Depop for like other MLS scarves from the draft because they're just all selling them for pocket change? These are things that I'd like to know.
Because even the people who were traded had the new scarves too. So like,
yeah,
if a team like traded up to acquire someone, they had that scarf ready. It's interesting. I wonder if they did have that box. They had to pick through. I'm gonna have to pick someone's brain about that. Get that.
Please do. I really want the answer to that.
I remember in the NHL draft, like Quentin Byfield or whatever, like all his cousins running around with like different NHL teams hats and he just like given them because he didn't end up going to those teams. So I imagine they got all the team scarves and then some family member or friend has, you know,
I was gonna say scarves are nice.
Yeah.
I mean,
but if you don't support the team, then you're never ever wearing it. And especially if you're the family of the kid that got drafted, like, why is Aunt Maggie wearing a Real Salt Lake scarf? I mean, this comes up every year with the Super Draft, and I'm sure someone's answered it, but I'm going to ask again. Why does college soccer have different rules than professional soccer? What is the advantage here? I mean, what's with the endless subs and all the different wrinkles in the college game? Why are they playing a different sport? I mean,
it's not there. Yeah. I mean, if you like minor soccer, amateur soccer growing up here in Canada, you have unlimited subs until I don't know, like till the semi-professional level almost.
Yeah, I
Um,
never played without unlimited subs, and I didn't play at the highest level, but I played high enough that you would think we would have limited subs.
yeah,
Mhm.
no, for the most part, like in I want to say amateur sport, like substitutions aren't limited. So I think NCAA considered that it is amateur athletes. I think to just reside under that sort of unlimited sub rule, but it's a fair shout because
Mhm.
these guys they could, I don't know if it prepares them the best for professional soccer, but
How can it when this guy's a left back, right? And the modern fullback is a very
Mhm.
physically demanding position. He's
Mhm.
never gone 90 minutes in that position, right?
Has he not?
Well, I
He
don't
might
know,
have
but I'm just guessing,
No,
based
no,
upon
it's not like that because I like college soccer. Even in Canada, there are players who go the full 90 minutes,
Mhm.
especially defenders. So I wouldn't say that he hasn't gone a full 90 minutes, but it's a fair shout. I mean, does it
It
prepare
just
them the
seems
best again?
yeah,
Yeah,
it just seems so illogical. Like especially with the super draft, you would think, considering all the bad juju that the super draft has, and the stats that prove that most players are in there for a cup of coffee and then they're done. It just seems
the Canadian
awfully.
Premier League has 3 subs.
Well, they have five now.
They have 5 now, but they did usually stick to that 3 sub rule, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, I don't think it's that obvious. It's because like
Mhm.
just below the Canadian Premier League. I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if like more leagues use a greater amount of sub, just because it gives more players a chance, and like yeah, again, I think that's the biggest point. It gives more players an opportunity, and I think that's the
Mhm.
goal at the amateur level is development. And I think any obstacle to kind of get around that, you just kind of throw away. And I guess that sub rule is that obstacle. I don't think it's really a hill to die on. I don't think it's fair to say it takes away
Hmm.
from someone's fitness per
Right.
se, because someone
Okay.
still be fit. But I mean, it's a fair concern at least to have on your radar, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
It's
you make a lot of good points, but like I said, it always befuddles me because I just it seems so counterintuitive, but that's just me coming at it from outside.
it's an incredibly small sample size, but the guy who I was always told was used in a very NCAA manner was Achara, was this player who they would bring on for 10, 15 minutes at a time and just have him, run as hard as he could
Yeah,
at
yeah,
guys and really create a lot of havoc and then pull him off again and then they almost hockey shifted him was what I was
yeah,
told
yeah.
what they
Exactly,
did with
exactly.
Achara
Yeah.
a lot, but that hasn't seemed to have affected him at the professional level at all. So
Very small
you know,
sample size.
yeah, yeah. Very, very
He's
small
a
sample
golden
size.
god.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
That's the thing with this guy. Is he had 2 good games, and now everyone, or even was it just one good
It
game?
was
I think it was
one,
two. It
Mitch.
was
One good
one
game
good
and a
Just
game.
good
one.
Yeah,
preseason.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, this guy.
yeah,
And
yeah.
now we
I'm
talk about
helping
him
to
like
bronze his statue in front of BMO later today.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
but nonetheless, that is definitely a factor. Toronto FC also selected Nathaniel Croft, who's a right winger, Paul Rothrock, and defender John Talon Maples. A lot of older guys. That seems to be something Toronto FC does. Is they pick up guys who are just a little bit older than the university age, and I think that's in some ways kind of goes to your point where they're looking for guys who are more ready to step in and play in a professional environment, and maybe are getting passed over for their age. Yeah, I think from the draft crop, it's just another couple guys that they can add to that roster and add some depth there in some positions.
Hmm.
So Eric G threw something up, and he just says Maryland has a
Great
great
shout.
track record of producing MLS-ready players: Twelman, Edu, Omar, Mullins, Endo, De La Garza, Zuzi, Sejic, Dwayne St. Clair, Stefan, etc.
Something about
Cool.
that DMV area, eh? I feel like 2, 3, maybe even 3 of the TFC prospects came out of that DMV area, which is Virginia, Maryland, and DC, obviously. Um, Hey, yeah, I mean, something's in just like Brampton here. Maybe something's in the
Yeah.
water there in that DMV area, and perhaps TFC tapped into something.
Mhm,
Good
mhm.
shout there by Eric G. I mean, TFC already have Subasa Endo. I know went to the University of Maryland, and I think Patrick Mullins there and Omar Gonzalez. I feel like TFC had one more as well that perhaps went to Maryland there, and
Yeah, I understand what that means now because it took me 5 tries when Eric tweeted turf, and I was like, "What's that?" And then obviously the Turtles are. Oh God, I lost my train of thought, but that has something to do with their university. I know it does. All right, moving on. I thought we only picked 3 guys up. I didn't know we picked up 4 guys.
No, we picked up 4. The fourth was a center back.
Okay.
The name's slipping my mind right now, but
I got Crofts Rothrock. I got Crofts. He's a right winger. So who cares about Piatti? We got a new.
Yeah, I think Crofts can play across the front line. It's just more that I've seen from him is he seems a little bit more versatile. Just consistency was the biggest question mark with him, but he's shown promise and
consistency when you're playing 5 minutes. I mean, I'm gonna bring it up forever because I still don't understand it. And then we got Paul Rothrock, great name, who's
played at Georgetown with Achara at the same time. Actually, there was a YouTube clip of them, I think, assisting a goal to one another, and that was pretty nice to see them link up. Perhaps there is some knowledge that TFC tapped into Achara there about Rothrock.
Oh, really? All right, so it's a terrapin. I don't like the Grateful Dead, so it's not in the back of my head constantly because of their record, Terrapin Station. I think that's the secret why people make that association so quickly is that they all love the Grateful Dead. Maryland's mascot, the Terrapin. Jeff, come on. All right, I'll never forget again. I promise. Until next week.
We got a lot of Maryland fans in here, eh?
Well.
Big Maryland show.
I think the last thing I wanted to touch on with the Super Draft is kind of the Philadelphia Union thing, right? They kind of just flexed on everyone and pulled completely out of the draft, and we're like, we'll just bet on our young kids. Which, again, I think it is a case by case basis. Philadelphia has a great academy. They've shown a good ability to bring in academy kids, make them part of their first team roster. I'm not saying that Toronto FC doesn't have a great academy. I think they do, but you're getting free players and you're getting a left back, which Toronto FC doesn't really have that player in their academy right now who's ready to step in. Why not get a guy who's played at a solid level, essentially for free? Take a look, see what this guy's about. And again, Eric G just mentioned them. There's a lot of good players still in the Super Draft as early as last year. I mean, St. Clair could be Canada's starter.
Alistair Johnson.
Alistair Johnson.
Yeah.
Even the Canadian guys. John Buchanan. There's so many still solid
I
players.
Personally, I think it was so stupid of them to do that. I understand
I see
social media message. I understand all of that. But with that being said, TFC acquired $50K in GAM and still kept all 4 picks. They accomplished the same thing that Philadelphia did accomplish, and they got to take a gamble on 4 players. I think it was pretty stupid of them and pretty early for them to jump the gun there.
Oh yeah, I've saved that tweet. I've bookmarked it so that I can submit it to tweets.
I hope one of those draft picks comes back and just buries on them, and I would love to see that.
I mean, they've sold half their roster away, right? Like this is not the same team that won the Supporter Shield last season. So all that bluster, I hope it pays off for you, Philadelphia, because otherwise you got a huge bullseye on your back.
And Philly has a good academy. They have a lot of really good up and coming prospects. Obviously, the 2 that they sold last season, Mark McKenzie and Brendan Aronson. But that being said, I'd put TFC up there right with them. It's not like Philadelphia has the best academy in all of MLS. They don't have any reason to be flexing like this. I think this one might come back to bite them.
I hope
Jeff, you are certainly the pettiest among us. I expect a full report at the end of the season. All the guys who pulled up the Union should have
bookmarked. It's bookmarked, baby. Let me tell you.
Love that.
Yeah. I can't wait to throw it back in their faces.
Yeah. So definitely something to watch for coming out of this year's Super Draft is the Philadelphia Union. But let's continue on here with our grab bag show. As I said, let's talk some Canadian national team because they had a camp, didn't really go as planned. They had initially planned to scrimmage the United States in a pair of matches, but unfortunately that got canceled. They had some inconclusive COVID tests in the camp and decided, we're not going to risk it here. All those thankfully came back negative, but it ended up Canada playing an inter-squad game. Again, we got limited look at this, but the one standout player from that for me, from a Toronto FC perspective, was Jaden Nelson, who looked really, really good in that game. Again, playing against a lot of veterans on the Canadian side. had an assist on the only goal in that game to Derek Cornelius. And yeah,
Great assist,
I mean, yeah, it's really positive for him coming into what I think is an important year, new coach at a position where Toronto FC don't really have a lot of depth. It is big confidence builder, and that's part of the importance of having a camp like this, is to give these guys, just a chance to play right now. And yeah, you guys
get out of the house, just a chance to get out of the house, basically.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think before the end of this 2021 MLS season, I think Jaden Nelson's going to be an everyday starter for Toronto FC. I think that the talent is through the roof with this kid, and he's growing. He's at an age where his body's growing a lot. And he's becoming more mature in his decision making. We saw at the Canada camp that first time cross was this weak foot, low driven right across the penalty spot. That's money in any league that you play in.
Yeah.
If you're able to drive a ball like that, again with your weak foot, like the defender's not really expecting that first time to come across, and you're able to find the ongoing attack. That's money, especially when you play with the likes of Josie Altidore, Denayo Akinola, the guys who crash the top of the box like that.
Even Mullins.
Yeah, exactly. Even Patrick Mullins, again, like if you can provide that level of service with also the potential of taking any defender on the league 1v1 and netting a goal on his own potentially, like again, the sky's the limit with this kid. I'm so excited to see what he's going to produce next year.
I loved Schaff. I loved what Schaff brought to that scrimmage. And oh my God, did you see Noble Okello?
Huge.
Noble Okello is absolute unit.
Absolute unit.
I think James said last time on the show, I think he has the physique to go anywhere that he wants in world football. He has that frame and he has that stature. And from a central midfielder, if you include the touch and the passing ability on that could be a dangerous product. So if Okello pans out, he has all the tools. But yeah, continue, Jeff.
I need to see some Noble this year. I need to see some of that. Like, I'm very, very excited. My question is another theoretical one, because I don't play soccer. When you are doing an inter-squad scrimmage, you can't be going 100%. I think
if it's national team camp, I think you could be.
Aren't you trying not to get injured for something as inconsequential as an inter-team scrimmage? I mean, again, I'm asking, and so
I think if at the end of the day, you're playing against the players and you're competing against the players in front of you for a spot on that national team. I think that's what it comes down to. Just from like in the past when playing at some pretty decent levels, I know scrimmages, practices would get intense because there is that competition within the team. So I'd imagine the same thing carries over with that national team. I still think that, and even just based off the highlights, I mean, I think people were still kind of going in. There was some hard fouls. I saw Ozo, I think, tagged. I'm not sure if it was Ralph Priso, but he kicked him pretty dang hard. So I don't think any guys were holding back there during that national team game, especially when there's spots on the line.
Okay, fair point.
Yeah, I'd say maybe mentally, like it's not quite 100%. Like these are still your teammates, so maybe you're pulling back that little bit, like in terms of the competitive nature and stuff. Like you saw some smiles and stuff, but like these were the games that were replacing the what was supposed to be games against the United States, right? So if you're John Herdman and staff, like you want your guys going as hard as they can to get properly prepared and to work on things like that. So, I certainly don't think they were holding back. Like this wasn't just
I know that they're teammates. I know they're teammates, but like, is Sam Piet and Jonathan Osorio going to hold back if they're tackling one another? I mean, they're yeah, right. They're not really the best of teammates.
Oso and Cavallini are actually properly gunning for each other. So.
Yeah.
I think all three of those guys were on the same team, so hopefully they weren't tackling each other from a different perspective. But
that's what I'm saying, right? Like it's a scrimmage, and some of these guys, have obligations to their club side, and I'm sure they don't want to go back to their clubs and say, well, I'm sorry, I tore my ACL in 15 different places in a scrimmage, right? It's a risk reward situation. And there's my cat. Hi, cat. It's a risk reward situation, and sorry, my cat's distracting me because this is his first appearance.
I was gonna say, his first appearance on WTR Weekly. That's huge.
Yeah, it's
huge debut.
he's afraid. He's got stage fright now. Well, Yeah, I don't know if I would try and win, to quote Tagwa's co-host, if I would be after winning all of my 50-50s in a inter squad scrimmage. But this is just me again.
What's wrong with the word scrimmage? Gav is saying, or we just said it a lot.
Scrimmage starting to sound really weird to you, Gav?
Yeah, well, now that I'm looking at how he spelt it, I think he used like 15 extra M's, but there we go. We'll put it up there. Never 100%, but definitely intense. Also, please stop saying scrimmage. Well, what's the alternative to scrimmage?
Inter-squad game. I don't know, red-white game. Anyway, I think we've probably exhausted the take on that. Other than I did want to say, like, yeah, the Schaffelberg Nelson stuff is promising because again, that's stuff that Toronto FC was missing a little bit last year, was that ability for their wide players to beat guys, and both those guys showed an ability to do that during this camp. So hopefully that continues going into preseason and hopefully next season as well, because certainly the more options Toronto FC have with that would be good. Let's switch national teams here. Talk about the women's national team. Bev Priestman calling in her first roster ahead of the She Believes Cup in February. 29-player camp, and as expected, she's getting a wider look at some of the options that she'll have with the national team. Bianca St. George, Evelyn Vaines, Jordan Listro, Riley Foster, and Samantha Chang getting their first call-ups, as well as some young players coming in, Jade Rose and Olivia Smith, who have been called in before. I think Olivia Smith might have made her first game, but I don't think Jade Rose has played at the senior level just yet. So yeah, I think an exciting roster. I mean, you've got that mix of young players. You've got some new players who've been impressing overseas and at home, or at least in the United States. So it's a good team, and I'm excited to see what they can do at this tournament.
There's gonna be competition for those spots. It's gonna be a competitive group. I think 29 players were called into this training camp roster, and they have to cut it down to 23. And if you take a look at the names that are on that list, it's not going to be an easy cut. Obviously, you mentioned the 6 players who were first time call ups, but there's some talent there, even though they are young. And we'll go back to that adage that James was struggling with last week. What is it? If you're
good enough, you're old enough.
If you're good enough, you're old enough. So
yes.
I was so scared.
That's huge. That's huge. Yeah. So the likes of the Olivia Smith and Jade Rose, there, like those girls they're talented. So I'd expect them to play some sort of role in the She Believes Cup as one of the 23 players. So then you'd look at around it, who else is there on that team, and there's not many names that you can take out of there that haven't become really household names over these past couple of years, because there's a lot of consistency in that lineup, and we're hearing about more of these names overseas with some of the biggest clubs, obviously with like Chelsea, Man City, PSG. The list goes on and on. Tottenham as well. Like, we have a lot of talented females that are coming up, and it's an exciting time. And it's going to be an interesting time for Bev Priestman, because it's a big test for her, because I believe that the Canadian women are at a time right now where they can take advantage, and they can actually make a run here, and they have a chance to bring something home that's maybe even better than bronze. And again, it's a way that it's something that can go either way. It can go either really bad or it could be really good. And I think Bev Priestman, her first shot at the helmet, it's going to be an interesting time.
It's a tough group, right? It's like Brazil, Japan, and one other team in the
United States.
In the She Believes
Cup.
Cup.
Those guys. Yeah.
In that tournament, I think that's just more of a warm up. I want to say gearing towards Tokyo 2021. Hopefully that still goes down, but I think that again that their main objective is the Olympics and the Women's World Cup moving forward.
I hate that name, She Believes Cup. I absolutely hate it. I'm really not a fan.
Why?
It just seems so pedantic, the She Believes Cup. I don't like the turn of phrase. But I'm not going to talk too much about that. It's just, it's not the best tournament name. They can come up with a better one, unless it's sponsored by She Believes, which I've never heard of as a brand before in my life. So. Yeah.
I was gonna say all the other tournaments are just sponsored by stuff, so it's not like I don't see how this is any worse than I don't know.
But I don't know what She Believes is. Is it a non-profit? Like, am I making fun of like a charity or something?
You could be making fun of a charity right now.
Yeah, I really hope not.
All right, whatever. It's snowing outside. What's that? A unicorn?
Oh man, that's funny.
Yeah, but you did mention one thing, which is that we hope the Olympics will happen, and that's unfortunately looking increasingly less likely. Reports out of Reuters that and other outlets suggesting this summer's Olympics might get canceled due to pandemic concerns, of course. Obviously a lot of disappointment. I think we all wanted to see what the Canadian U23 men's side could do. We all wanted to see. I think it's obviously bigger for the women's game, of course. That's a massive tournament for them, and Canada's been preparing for that for a while. So that's what would really be disappointing if these games got canceled, is this opportunity for this very good Canadian side to try and medal for tournaments in a row. Yeah. So we'll see. I hope, I almost hope that if it doesn't happen, at least on the women's side, they create another tournament with the top teams in the world. I don't know what they do in a one-off situation, but I don't see why not, because the main concern over the Olympics obviously is like so many sports, so many countries, so many athletes. Not to mention all the staff and everything else that it takes to have both a secure and safe Olympic Games in a non-COVID time. But I could see how they could do some kind of bubble tournament just for the international side. So hopefully something happens this summer.
Yeah. I mean, we were discussing before the show started that Florida graciously stepped in and said that they would be willing to host the Olympics just in case, which I'm all for. I think that would be fantastic. I can only imagine the absolute chaos that would be, especially with so little time on the back end to organize venues and stuff like that. It would be terrific. But I mean, I feel bad for the athletes that have found ways to, and I'm not talking about soccer athletes. I'm talking
so
about,
bad.
Yeah, like the guys that have found ways to train, despite the pandemic, and now they're looking at a 4-year layoff in between opportunities to compete on the Olympic stage.
You had those athletes that were preparing for the 4 years for 2020, and then you got to think that their whole training schedule, they were primed to be in their peak, athletic fitness level in 2020, and then that got pushed back a year. And most of these athletes probably aren't funded very well, or they're not.
Or if they are, it's constantly in flux because when people start closing the purse strings, especially
exactly. So so then that gets pushed back a year. So they have to figure out what they're going to do for the next 12 months to make sure they still stay in that peak, form during a pandemic, and obviously plan towards going to the Olympics and whatever. And then you hear that this might happen, and that's just. I can't even, my heart goes out to them because I can't even imagine.
I'm sure the individual sports are going to try and do something in order to maintain the status quo as best as they can. But the Olympics are the Olympics. I mean, and it's, some of these athletes are going to miss out on the opportunity to compete in their primes. And that's,
if we want to relate that, we want to relate that back to Canada soccer and just the Canadian women's national team. I mean, think about someone like Erin McLeod, who turned 37, I think it was this year. And even Christine Sinclair's 37, but she's still performing. Erin McLeod's, battled a lot of injuries in her recent years. And she obviously was the first choice goalkeeper for Canada before going down with injury. And, was this her last kind of pushback towards, making that Olympic Games and being part of that squad? And, if the Olympics does get canceled, what's going to happen with her? It's really, really sad to think about, like just bringing it down to each athlete individually, as opposed to, the whole Canada soccer. It's really heartbreaking, and we wish them the very best, and we hope that they can put together some sort of competition if the Olympics does get canceled in 2021.
Yeah, this would be, I mean, I'm guessing here, but no, because it went in World War II for a little bit, and then I'm just wondering if this is the first time that the Olympics has been canceled in the modern era.
I wouldn't know that. You're testing my Olympic history on that.
Yeah, I don't know offhand. Yeah, maybe somebody smarter can chime in the comments, but it's certainly not. It doesn't happen often. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory.
Let's not forget Canada Olympic gold medalists at I want to say 1920. I'm not sure. Well, in the 1920s, we won a soccer men's gold medal, so that is still technically our greatest soccer accomplishment of all time.
My greatest Olympic accomplishment is the Archie or Betty and Veronica issue where they go to the Calgary Olympics and ski. That was a great issue.
I don't remember that episode of Riverdale, but at any rate,
Riverdale's not Archie, man. Riverdale's
I told you guys this would be a grab bag of topics on this week's show. Let's move on.
I can discuss last night's Bachelor for at least another 20 minutes. So.
I haven't watched it yet, so we'll have to. That'll be an after show discussion. Let's move on to one last bit of good news, and that is the Canadian Premier League hoping to return for a full season, May 22nd. That's the Victoria Day long weekend. They're hoping to have supporters in the stands as well. We'll see where they get to on that. Obviously, a lot of things, up in the air on everything that we've talked about in today's show. But good news, I think, the Island Games definitely built some momentum back up for this league, and as close to they can get to a full season next year is important, of course, because, everything we saw this year was so truncated and like small from the Canadian Premier League. A lot of the players I wanted to see, a lot of the guys that I think could have a future in at higher levels, they only had such a small sample size for themselves. So I'm excited to see what, some of these guys can do over a full season.
Yeah, I think May 22nd is ambitious. I think fans in the stands is beyond ambitious. But, I'm a cynic by nature. We have no date for the Can Champ final, and like absolutely no even potential for a date, and we're running out of weeks.
I think they're talking about it behind the scenes. Obviously, there's still things that are ongoing. I think Martin Bailey was the one who said second week of March, so perhaps that's something that TFC fans can look out for. But I'd expect it to be somewhere around then, and I don't see it being much earlier. Hopefully, the MLS season doesn't really clash with that, and labor negotiations don't affect that at all. But there will be some action to look forward to from a TFC perspective in the next, I'd say, 2 months for sure.
Yeah, one of the concerns about that, of course, is the international break as well. You've got, of course, World Cup qualifiers. You've got Osorio, guys like that who are written in pen in the Canadian squad.
Is the international break, yeah. So if they can avoid that, that'd be ideal. So TFC aren't missing some of those guys.
And I also want the narrative that Armis's first game, he
wins
could win
trophy.
silverware. Like I really want that. I mean, I know that it's such a lower, so much lower on the totem pole of concerns, but I that would be amazing.
That'd be a good start. Yeah, that'd be a positive start to your tenure, and hopefully that would carry over into the season. I think Ollie reported this morning. I just want to give him a quick shout out that Kyle Becker is re-upped with Oliver Platt, re-upped with Forge FC long term. So that's the
Oliver Platt is playing for Forge FC now.
Sorry, Kyle
I hope
Becker,
not for Forge's sake. We've seen what Ollie can do with Waking the Red FC, and
I was going to say. I've heard he's pretty damn good.
No, he's actually not bad, but I don't know if he's Canadian Premier League level.
That's hilarious. But yeah, shout out to that TFC draft pick, and hey, he's done great stuff with Forge, and he's really cemented a spot there in his lineup. George there has a question. It's Canadian Championship location on neutral ground, and are they going to be playing with an orange ball?
I hope
Dude, they can play with a purple ball for all I care. I just want to see some damn.
Yeah, if the Canadian Championship, when it does go down, where do you guys think it would happen? I got to say BMO. No.
I had heard some things that maybe out west was what they were looking at. That was, of course, months ago when we thought it was going to be played after TFC's season. But yeah, I don't know. Like in terms of weather, that would probably make the most sense. But I think if you're Toronto FC, you're pushing heavily for it to be played at BMO, and then if you're Forge FC, you're pushing pretty heavily for it not to be played at BMO. So we'll see. We all know the MLS sides, for better or for worse, have a bit more pull potentially. At least optically, they do in terms of the this competition, but we'll see how that turns out. That might there's going to be a lot of interesting narratives leading up to this.
So
game
many, so many, because it just keeps getting pushed, right? And then we keep running out of time and running out of time and running out of time. It's amazing with so much time, so much free time, we can't seem to get this game played.
Yeah,
but you know, I have faith that it'll get played because I want CCL so badly. I want CCL, man. That's our trophy.
That Forge TFC matchup, that's a good one just because there's so many crossover fans too. There's a lot of intersections there, and I'm excited for it. We'll hear more about it in the coming weeks.
I think that's a good place to leave things off. That we're hoping for a couple more details on a lot of these things in the coming weeks. A lot of speculation and guesswork right now, but at least we have some dates that we can look forward to right now, which is always exciting. That at least plans are in place for all these leagues that we love to return, and these national teams as well. So hopefully that works out. But until then, on behalf of Jeff, Michael, myself, hope you all have a good and safe week. And until next Tuesday.
Stay warm. Yeah. See you next week, guys. Cheers.